Any secrets you tell now are on live, so be careful, Steve. Call the meeting to order. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the October meeting?
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries. Consent agenda is request for piggyback contracts, AVI, Vronsky. Do I have a motion to approve?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion.
Steve has discussion.
No, I didn't really understand what that item was.
Vronsky, Bill, is he here?
We can move on. That's fine.
So I can maybe help. So they are part of the ARP funds so are you questioning the service or? So it's to put a microphone, because they've talked about putting ballistic glass in the admin.
Okay, so it's for communication to the public, right?
Correct.
So we have, in our space, we have the little thing that you just talked through, right? Is
Right.
this something different than that?
It's my understanding that it's an improvement from that. Learning what we've learned
Yeah,
from down
exactly.
there, it's an improvement.
Well, that makes good sense then.
And maybe Jill can add.
Yeah, it's a better system than what we have in auditors.
Okay,
So it's just the communication part of it, separate from the ballistic glass part.
okay, sounds good.
Very good. Okay, regular agenda, number one, House Bill 1307, Back to Blue Grant. Joe Anderson, do you explain? And Joe, actually, you can come up to the table for this. This it's a little bit more. We can look at you closely if you're starting to sweat or anything.
All right, well, thanks for having me this morning. On behalf of Chief Zabolski and Assistant Chief Stefanowitz, as indicated, House Bill 1307, the last legislative session, the legislation earmarked $3.5 million for law enforcement and correctional agencies across the state. That was to be used for a number of different areas, specifically recruiting, retention, and hiring. When the monies were divvied out a short while ago, the city of Fargo Police Department was allocated $264,000 to be spent at the discretion of the chief. And it's been decided that that money will be allocated for retention purposes in terms of bonuses to be paid out. And we have identified a method to disperse those funds based off of the City of Fargo vacation accrual. That information has been provided by Assistant Chief Stefanowitz. So right now, those numbers are based off 175 sworn. We will not be hiring any additional persons until January of 2024, when our next academy will start. So there is a chance that we will actually lose personnel, and that 175 might be less than what it is. And if that is the case, those funds will be reallocated for, per the bill, either for retention or training or recruiting purposes. So our recommended motion is to, bear with me for a second, is to accept the Back the Blue as a result of North Dakota legislative passing House Bill 1307 in the amount of $264,000 awarded to the Fargo Police Department, and make those appropriate budget adjustments for 2024.
Joe, is there a sense of how you want to distribute it? So for instance, at one time for the employees of the city of Fargo, we give $1,000 to everybody. How does the police force assess how they want to distribute this money?
I believe the intent is sometime well, one, to allow City of Fargo Finance to set up the appropriate coding. Sometime in January of 2024, we would, based off of our recommended dispersal chart, we would do a lump sum, I believe that's the intent, a lump sum dispersal to those who qualified for it.
Any questions, any discussion? Do I have a motion?
Also move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
So just for a statement for the public, I guess it says on here that there's no city match or anything like that on this. It's just,
That is correct. There is no city match. There's no city obligation other than accepting the funds from the state, from the Attorney General's office.
And then do you happen to know, did the chief or will they work with HR on setting up that?
Yes, so
How
it's,
they're gonna formulate that then?
yes, so the assistant chief has already been in contact with HR, I believe with HR, but I know with finance in particular, with Jordan to come up with the dispersal plan and how we're going to do that. Like I said, it's been really based off of the vacation accrual chart that the city has in place.
So I'd assume with this motion, Joe, we work with HR, finance to distribute this appropriately.
Correct.
Okay. Any other comments, Dave, anything? All those in favor say aye.
I,
Opposed? Motion carries. LEM WHA grant.
Yeah, so as a continuation over our emphasis in building officer wellness, the department applied for and received from the Office of Community-Oriented Policing $188,539 for the purpose of employing one civilian wellness mental health coordinator on a contractual basis from October 1st, 2023 through 9/30/2025. There is no city match to the $188,539. That amount is to pay for the salary and benefits of the position over that 2-year period. Like I said, the grant does not require any financial obligation from the city of Fargo, nor does the city will not be required to continue the position once the grant has expired. So the city at that time can elect to cease the program. However, by creating that civilian wellness coordinator position, it's going to allow us to really do a deeper dive into officer wellness. That is one of a new emphasis within the last few years across the country for law enforcement. And then also takes it out of the hands of law enforcement officers that will be better used on the street versus someone who's that's what they're educated and trained in is doing mental health awareness. So we feel that that's an opportunity to grow our mental health and wellness program.
Any questions? Do I have a motion?
I will move to approve.
Is there a second?
second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. PSU grant.
Yeah, so historically, throughout the years, this Fargo Police Department, City of Fargo, we have applied for officers through the Office of Community-Oriented Policing, COPS Grant Office. This year, Chief Zabolski applied for 6 with the emphasis of traffic safety. We were awarded $750,000 for the purpose of employing 6 officers to advance the practice of community policing and public safety partnerships through building trust and legitimacy. This does require the city to match a certain amount of funds. The city is obligated to pay $954,804 or 56.01% over that identified 3-year period for a combined project cost of $1.7 million and some change.
And Susan, this was in the budget?
It is in the budget. We anticipated, we're optimistic that we would receive this, so we did budget the match. If you look on the second page of that, it's a little confusing, but the way we had to show both the revenue coming in and the expense, and then the removed part is what was actually budgeted. So I think our budget was a little short. We budgeted 176,000, and the actual share will be at 194, so we'll need a bit of a budget adjustment for that.
Any questions, Joe? Do you have a motion?
I will move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second, can I add something? We have to invite Deputy Chief Anderson back more often because he seems to bring a lot of money. So I just,
Anytime.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thanks, Joe.
No,
Appreciate
thank you
the
very
help.
much.
Deferral request for Sanford North. Durgan to explain, and Dan, I guess.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm going to talk about both items kind of similarly because they are unique in a lot of ways, but we'll start with the Sanford request. It is a 10-year non-interest bearing request, and this is due to the fact that this land, when annexed in, was due for our benefit for the Southwest Pond drain area. So they were actually annexed in to help get our infrastructure down to this area, 45th Street South, 64th Avenue South. And for their two particular parcels, as you see on the map, they're both located in that southwest portion of the intersection at 45th Street and 64th Avenue. So there is, nothing planned at this time or going on with either one of these parcels. And because of that annexation kind of being brought to them and not them requesting it for development, they're asking for a 10-year non-interest-bearing deferral.
And this is within policy?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. And it would be our recommendation to approve it, but we'll support the facts and findings of the committee.
Any questions? Can I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second it. I have a question though. So you talk about this is something we haven't done in the past, and are they eventually going to develop it, or what? Do they have a plan?
I believe at this time they have no plan for development, but there would be future.
Town's coming up.
Well, and this is following policy that we've used in the past, isn't it, on annexations?
Yes.
Yes. And again, really, this is that 2,300 acres that were master planned in the Southwest Metro area. And like Doug mentioned, it was really us that led the charge to annex this area because we needed it for our infrastructure to support that overall growth area. But yes, eventually it will be developed.
So can I ask one more? So obviously this is 64th Avenue and that's an arterial we're concerned about. So is this being included in that a little bit? Obviously the plans with that, it's in that area?
The deferrals would include some of the recent projects on 64th, including the overpass, if that's what you're asking.
And so I guess that's my main thing. They know, obviously it's going to be an arterial, and so, but obviously they own the land probably for that reason, that they, down the road, they'll put something there. But my main thing is we've got an issue with Horace and making sure we keep these arterials reserved, and so they are aware of that, right?
Yes.
Okay. That's awesome. Thank you.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Now you got deferral request for A&T Land Company.
And this one, again, is very similar to Sanford. They do have a couple parcels that are actually located in the northeast corner of that intersection these are smaller parcels. They'll have smaller special assessments on them. As you can see on the map, they're going to be part of our drain system, stormwater system there. There is some swapping of land between the public schools and things like that. But at this time, those two parcels are sitting to the northeast section, and then they also have two parcels to the southwest portion of that intersection next to Sanford. And as noted in the information with the memo, one of those at some point will become our parcel sometime soon, I think. But at this time, it's still Sanford. So they requested both parcels, or A&T, so they requested that at both times, or at this time.
Same issues, Tom?
Yes.
Can I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And carried. Purchasing policy, Tanner to explain.
Hi, I'm going to start.
Or Susan to explain.
I'm just going to do the introduction. So can you advance to the next slide, please? So Jill and Tanner will be doing most of this, but I wanted to start out on the first page just to give you a little overview on this and also to express my appreciation on how hard Tanner and Jill have worked on this. So this is kind of the chronology of how we got to where we are. So Tanner was hired last fall and Jill was brought up from the auditor's office early January. Since that time, they've been working with the various departments on the existing purchasing policy, what's working, what's not, what unique items do they see. They've also been researching Century Code, working with Nancy. They've assisted departments through many purchasing processes. I've got a lot of compliments from other departments on how that's helped them. Tanner attended the National Institute for Government Procurement. We drafted an update, and then I think a really important part of that was then he took that back to a lot of the big purchasing departments to see what issues they might have with that or what questions. And then, of course, we had the legal review by Nancy. So that brings us to where we are today. We're going to talk about this at this committee, and then we hope to bring it to the City Commission next week. And then I think just as important as that, I think, are the next steps on how we're going to roll this out. So we've already got plans to take kind of the traveling road show to the different departments. Jill and Tanner, along with the accounting tech in our office that works with the departments, to provide some education. We're looking at setting up an intranet. That's kind of a one-stop shop internally for finding all of your purchasing items, RFPs and different state contract links. And then, of course, Tanner and Jill will always be a resource for departments on working on this process. So I will turn it over to Tanner.
So on this slide, we have our top 8 objectives that we kind of want to strive. These aren't only just internal objectives, these are also external, and then also assisting city commission items. We're trying to encourage more vendor access and fair bidding processes. We do have a new ERP coming in that's going to have a kind of a punch-out system that will allow vendors to register and see a little more clearly items that we have available for procurement. We ensure stewardship of public funds, standardizing our RFP, our commission agenda items so that you guys are seeing all the same templates that we have available. Our current efficiencies through tools and templates, whether it be commission agenda items, our RFPs, our quotes. I'm trying to standardize all our templates. And then we're here to address unique and/or special situations. Something comes up that we don't have to deal with every day that we may become a pretty good resource to. Some updates to the policy. So like Susan said, I attended that NIGP conference this summer. Learned a lot about best practices. We've worked quite a bit with the state, the OMB. And so here are some specific updates to our policy. Clarifications of the procurement process. We've added the procedures section to really define what people should be doing. Updated limits and approvals. New exempt purchases. This is with proprietary items that we have in our system already for maintenance items and compatibility with city-owned infrastructure. Rules for specialized purchases, updated forms and templates. We did provide links to our state procurements and/or cooperative purchasing sites to piggyback off of. And then, like Susan also said, become a resource for RFP and invitation to bids preparation. And then the last one I sent, I handed out an additional sheet before this meeting started. We met with Nancy on Friday, and we're trying to work out the contract section of when and who signs the contracts between 10 and 100,000. And we've came to the conclusion that if reviewed by the city attorney, signed by the city administrator, or city assistant administrator, or the department head, and attested by the city auditor, then the documents we sent to the purchasing department and retained for long-term storage.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Chair?
Sure.
So can I ask, so what happens now with some of those smaller contracts? Who signs them and what's the,
So right now, we collect that contract and we try to get it through city commission at the very next commission meeting before we start the projects. But some of these projects get pushed back if they had just missed a commission meeting. Some projects that should have been started, 3 weeks ago are getting delayed for, 2.5, 3 weeks. And we're running into some timeline issues. Vendors are getting booked up. So it's kind of slowed the process down for the process, or for the threshold from 10 to 200,000. In the next slide, I'll show you our thresholds. It will kind of make a little more sense, but everything over 100,000 will still go to city commission for contract approval and recommendation. So here's the updated purchasing limits. As you can see, the 0 to 10,000 has not changed. It's still single discretion to obtain the greatest value approved by the division head. Level 2 purchasing, we've increased from the old limits to this 10,000 to 100,000. This is on recommendation of best practices and for towns similar to our size, and kind of following the state of North Dakota OMB. Level 3 over 100,000 would be a formal procurement process similar to what it is now, an RFP, an invitation to bid, a public bid opening. And then level 4 would be construction projects per NDCC 4801 to 02.1. Currently that is 200,000.
so Mr. Chair, if I can jump in, I guess the thing that concerns me the most is, I think a few of us were around when we had issues where one of the department heads had multiple charges that kept below the number $10,000. Do you remember that? And we had a serious legal issue. And the thing that concerns me, it says under $10,000, documentation not required. Well, that's what happened, and that's how we ended up having a serious problem. And so that's, how are we gonna, that's what concerns me. Does that make sense? And maybe there's a way that we will track that, but literally, I was here when that happened, and I don't want that to repeat. And it looks to me like if you don't have documentation, then something like that could happen again. Could you talk about how that would not happen?
Absolutely. These are single items per year, single fiscal year. And we have checks and balances in that we didn't have before. Adding us to this finance department has really streamlined a lot of different procurement processes. We review the budgets, we review limits of what items are coming down, whether it's, situations like that or larger stuff like, multiple departmental projects. But
I just want to repeat, if I look at this and take it literally, under $10,000, the only approval is the division head. And I'm not sure I'm comfortable with that. I would like to have either the city administrator or the auditor or someone.
I think, Tanner, we really need a clarification and no documentation required. I think Dave's, how would you catch what happened before in which somebody kept spending just under 10 grand, did 100 grand, 200 grand, was not doing it properly. So when you say documentation not required, that seems kind of funky.
so that's our documentation for forms, like a quote form, a piggyback form, a sole source form.
They don't have to go through something, but
they-
Susan, how would you catch if they were doing something?
Well, this is the one that we did not change. So this is currently how we're doing this. From $0 to $10,000 within a department, it's only people that are authorized. Not everyone is authorized to purchase on behalf of a department. And so they use their best discretion. I guess we could work through some talking points on how we want to do that. For example, all of our purchases go through our accounts payable techs. And, they're pretty sticklers. They send things back with questions. So, we could, require some sort of narrative on there, use this one. There's a reason why, what's the reason? If it's the same purchase repeatedly, they're going to notice. I'll probably notice.
I was here back then. And I think there've been a number of steps that have been taken to try to tighten up that purchasing. And the new vendor onboarding is much more detailed and secure now than it was previously. Like Susan said, the techs that pay these, they really have eyes on them. They're the first ones to see things. And sometimes it's frustrating to get a check cut, but you just got to take a breath and say, okay, they're just doing their job, right? So I think if you saw something where a new vendor and then you saw it repeatedly through it, it would rise to the level that somebody would ask questions.
So, Mr. Chair, do you mind if I follow up? So, I mean, from your perspective, Steve, then this is something that would be, something like that, if that would happen, that would be reviewed and would be caught and would be brought up. But I mean, that literally, it happened, and so that's what's the concern.
Yeah, and one of the things, I mean, all of that we're referencing happened before we had the purchasing policy that we're updating now. I think that we've taken steps with that first purchasing policy and now refining and honing that purchasing policy even more now, so.
And there still is documentation required to get that that check cut. You need invoices, whether it be a fixed asset addition forms, but there is some documentation required. These are internal documentations we have listed here.
Okay, thank you.
And then special conditions on the bottom, piggyback, similar to what we do now. We opened up some sites for some state procurement, sole source, emergency, and then the exempt one is one that we kind of talked about, brought up here a little bit ago. And then the bottom two are two specific departments that not necessarily will be making the purchases, but assisting with open contracts or ideas for those specific items.